Hi, my name is Marcus and I'm the author of the TOS Dice Rollers. There are two flavours of TOS Dice Roller, TDR Plus and TDR5. They were created to interface with the TOS Plus and TOS 5 character sheets to extract attack, damage and effect information and to enable automatic combat dice rolling for almost every scenario. This video will give you an introduction on how to use TDR5. In summary, TDRFive streamlines melee combat by making dice rolling easier and faster. It's aimed mainly at players who use TOS sheets dynamically to relieve them from having to laboriously find, roll, and add dice manually during gameplay. It's also aimed at game masters to enable them to select creatures for combat from an editable database of creature stat blocks, roll combat dice, and save and ability checks, and to track combat order and damage done to creatures. This is what you'll see after loading TDR5. This is the combat sheet, where all character and ad hoc combat rolls take place. It's divided into 10 sections. The banner, which is always visible, miscellaneous rolls, player attack rolls, the character summary, player damage rolls, initiative, save rolls, and ability checks, skills rolls, and finally the TOS 5 sheet paths. Let's load some character sheets. Simply press the green Open button to load the file specified in the File Names block. If the file name is blank, you'll be able to select a file to load. Once the character is loaded, all the relevant data will be imported from the TOS 5 character sheet and displayed in the relevant sections of TDR. To load another character sheet, simply press an empty red character box and select. Okay, let's look at the sections in a bit more detail. First, the banner. You can jump between your loaded TDR5 sheets, and selecting each will update the tables with the character's combat parameters. You'll also notice that the three characters have avatars. These avatars can be edited and created, of course. And I just realized that Rogue's avatar is incorrect for a Dragonborn character. So let's change it. Select the character. There he is, and that file name is wrong. So let's find the right one. Dragonborn Rogue, there he is. And then we'll just replace it. Yep. Let's reselect him and you'll see that the avatar has changed. Note that the images you attach to characters as avatars must be created or downloaded and stored in the Monster Images directory before you can attach them to a character. There's more information about this in the user guide. I probably won't be demonstrating that here. You can also open the user guide. The guide is very comprehensive and will cover everything in much more detail than I can put in this video. So I'd strongly recommend that you take some time to look at it. You can open links, say to the D&D wiki, and see some rules around grappling and critical hits, stuff I always get confused about. You can also select an appropriate combat sheet layout. If you're playing with TOS 5 character sheets only, you would select TOS 5 only, which is what you see here. If you want to play some ad hoc effects, like spells or NPCs, select TOS 5 and Ad-Hoc. This will display the ad hoc combat tables, which I'll talk about later. If you're a game master, you'll only want to play NPCs and of course have the miscellaneous dice rolls. And finally, you can select whether or not to apply crunchy crits to your critical hits. The miscellaneous rolls section is pretty self-explanatory, and players will likely use this section to roll miscellaneous dice as instructed by their game master. Game masters can also use this section instead of having to find and roll dice. Roll d20 is probably the most frequently requested roll by a game master, and it's worth pointing out at this stage that any roll of a d20 in TDR will allow the option of doing advantage and disadvantage rolls. So let's roll them just for fun. Standard d20 roll, advantage roll, disadvantage roll, percent. Let's put in a reason here. Roll. Top bottom roll is an interesting one because you can select the number of dice to roll, how many sides on the dice, whether or not to re-roll, in this case less than or equal to 1. You can also put greater than or equal to there. You can keep the top 3 dice as it is in this case. You can add a plus. The other thing worth noting is that you can explode dice. So that means every time you get a maximum face value roll, it will roll another dice. So we'll do a couple of them. And right away you can see it's exploded because you rolled a 6, so it rolled another dice, and the total result is 15. All these rolls, certainly on this sheet, are logged in the history sheet. So here are the rolls that we did. We rolled a d20, we rolled an advantage and disadvantage d20, and it showed you the dice that were rolled. Percentage, the miscellaneous rolls, the reason, the top bottom rolls that we did, only the last one exploded. Player attack roll parameters are displayed for up to 6 weapons. The table shows the crit range, which can be changed, the miscellaneous pluses to be applied, which can also be changed, the d20 dice roll, which will appear in brown, and the final result of the attack in pink cells. Note that when the cells are black, it means you've rolled a 1. So it's a miss. As well as a normal roll, attacks can be done with advantage and disadvantage. Let's do an advantage attack. The result of the attack roll, as you can see here, has been highlighted in red, which means it's a critical hit. Down here in the damage roll section, you'll see that the critical hit weapon has also been highlighted in red. If we go to the history sheet now, you can see the result of that roll, and that it was an advantage attack, the name of the character, and the rolls for the different weapons. You can see here the roll was 20 for the rapier, and that was an advantage roll, so it picked between 20 and 13. The summary table allows you to review some important stats for the currently active TOS 5 character. It also lets you quickly jump into the TOS 5 character sheet itself. The round counter for the active TOS character is displayed here. The current round for loaded characters are extracted from the TOS 5 dashboard, and counters for the loaded characters can be quickly incremented without having to jump to the TOS 5 sheet. You can do this either individually or all at once. You can also reset the round counters for all sheets to 0. Just to demonstrate, let's increment the round for Biggie Badass. You'll always see a warning pop up because the time remaining for active effects on the dashboard will be changed whenever the round number changes. See, the round counter is incremented. You can do it for all characters as well, and then you can zero them all at once. So we can set this back to 0 now. Moving on to the damage table, TDRFive extracts all relevant damage parameters for up to 6 weapons when a character is selected. Each weapon effect, up to 6 of them, can be toggled off or on to remove or add them from the damage totals. Normal and critical damage totals are always shown. Let's roll some damage. The component effect results are displayed in the pink cells. The total damage for each weapon is displayed in the green column for normal damage and the orange column for critical hit damage. If a critical hit had been achieved for a particular weapon, the weapon name and the orange critical damage total cell for that weapon will highlight in red. If you remove a weapon effect because it's not applicable, you need to re-roll. Now the total damage columns will exclude that effect. If a character can sneak attack, you can enable the sneak attack calculation here and re-roll. The result of the sneak attack damage is displayed at the bottom of each total column, and these have been added to the effect results. Let's look at the history sheet for these rolls. And you can see here that we rolled damage for the rogue. It will always display both normal and critical damage. You can see that we removed the rogue effect number 2 and then we re-rolled. We then added sneak attack, and you can see the result of rolling that sneak attack and the sneak damage that was applied to each. The initiative, save, ability and skills rolls are of course only D20 rolls. Just briefly though, remember that the brown cells are the raw D20 rolls or the selected roll from advantage and disadvantage rolls. The pink cells are always the actual result that's been achieved with the roll, plus bonuses. And again, all the rolls are logged in the history sheet. There are 4 main sheets in TDR. This combat sheet, the Ad-Hoc sheet, the history sheet, and the notes sheet. You can quickly navigate between them using the buttons on the banner. So moving on to the Ad-Hoc sheet. This is probably the most complex sheet to use and explain, so let's break it down a little. The 3 sections are the Ad-Hoc table, the summarized creature stats, which is going to be used mainly by game masters, the stat block for the selected creature, and finally, for all loaded TOS 5 character sheets, the rollable spells and other effects that can be used by a character. This will be used mainly by players. To be more specific, This sheet is mainly for game masters, so they can roll for combat, save and ability checks, and so they can keep track of initiative, combat order, and damage inflicted on the creatures in the table. So let's demonstrate. So to roll damage and saves and ability checks all at once, press the roll all ad hocs button. You can also roll for initiative for every creature in the table. Subsequently, you can sort the table in descending initiative order, which is essentially combat order, and you can sort the table in alphabetical order. Be aware as well that you can change any blue or yellow shaded cell directly by double clicking on the appropriate cell. So let's change the crit range for the mage. A really nice feature of the ad hoc sheet is to be able to define and edit stat blocks for any creature using the stat block editor. Let's start the editor. So all of the fields in both of the sheets for the editor you can edit. You can view the image of the creature. You can do a web lookup on the creature. If you change any of the stats in here or change the name, you can add the creature to the database or replace the creature in the database or delete the creature from the database. If you created a whole bunch of creatures in a previous version of TDR, you can import that database from that version. The purpose of this sheet for players is to enable the selection of rollable damage spells and other rollable non-weapon effects. These can be entered into the ad hoc table and subsequently be loaded into the ad hoc combat section in the combat sheet. So let's demonstrate. The drop-down contains all the effects that can be used by all the loaded TOS 5 characters. Let's select the rogue's Searing Smite. All the details are displayed here, and you can load it into the ad hoc table. As with any creature or effect entered into the ad hoc table, you must enter a unique ID. This is mostly applicable to tabletop gaming where tokens may be used to identify combatants. Let's just put in 50. You can scroll up and now you can see he's in the table. And it does 1d6 of damage. And it's put in the table in blue text to make it easy to identify player characters. You can then go to the combat sheet. Make sure you select the TOS 5 plus ad hoc layout. Go to the ad hoc attack and damage section. Now let's find the entry for the rogue's Searing Smite. There it is. Now you see it's identified as a magic effect, and you can roll damage. 2 points. Yeah, 3 points. While I'm here, if you're a game master, you might want to add a couple of other creatures to the combat tables. So let's add a mage, let's add a knight, and so on. Of course you can do attacks, damage, and when they're in the table, you will also get an entry into the history sheet for that roll, which could be useful. Another feature that a game master might find useful is that a creature's stat block can quickly be viewed by clicking on the creature's name in the damage table. This will take you directly to the relevant stat block on the ad hoc sheet. So we want to look at the mage's stat block, and there it is. A bit more detail on the ad hoc table. Initially, the table is populated with creatures for illustrative purposes. These should be erased before embarking on your own campaign. It's also important when you fill the table to do a backup of the table, so if you make an inadvertent change, you can always recover it. So we'll back up and clear the table, and you can restore the table. As already demonstrated, there are two modes of operation. You can roll directly from within the Ad-Hoc sheet, or roll attacks and damage from within the combat sheet, where rolls are recorded in the history sheet. As a reminder as well, the blue cells and the yellow cells are fully editable and define a creature's combat parameters. Let's take a quick look at how to enter creatures into the table. First, let's clear the table. Entries can be made completely manually by entering information into the white, blue and yellow cells of the table. But you'll need to follow conventions for character name and attack type to ensure that sorting will work properly. It's best if you read the manual to be clear on how to do manual entries. It will usually be quicker and easier to simply follow the prompts. The prompts will enable entry of a single creature with one attack, multiple attacks for a creature, or multiple independent creatures of the same type. To populate the table automatically is reasonably straightforward. First, select a creature from the drop-down. I think let's just stick with the adult black dragon. Then copy the creature to the table using the button. The first question is, are you going to add one or more independent adult black dragons? The answer is yes, we are. I'm just going to do one at the moment. The next prompt will ask if you want to retain that name or change it somehow. The default is just adult black dragon number 1. And if you want to change the name completely, I strongly suggest that you maintain the numbering convention. So follow whatever name you put in by a hash and then a number. I'll just leave it like this right now. And then it will ask what weapon you want. I think let's just do a bite. Then of course you have to enter a unique ID. In this case it's just 1 because it's an empty table. You can also enter multiple independent creatures of the same type at the same time. So let's look for a knight. So let's enter a few knights. Here somewhere, there we go. Knight. Copy creature to Ad-Hoc table. Yes, we're going to add one or more independent knights. Let's add 3 knights and go through the process. Knight number 1, a longsword, greatsword. ID number 2. Knight number 2. Let's do heavy crossbow. Number 3. Let's do the 3rd knight again with a greatsword. And number 4. Now if you want to edit any of these to give them more hit points or different attack bonuses or different damages, what have you, different saves, go ahead and just edit them within the table here. So let's say you want to do multiple attacks for one of the creatures in the table. Let's say the adult black dragon, you want to do a bite and a claw. So just click on him. You'll see that adult black dragon is now featured in the stat block. Now we can just copy the creature to the Ad-Hoc table. We don't want to add one or more independent adult black dragons. We want to just do multiple attacks. So we'll say no. You're going to add multiple attacks? Yes. How many? Oh, just one. Let's go, this is going to be, the first one was a bite, we're going to do claw. Oh, give it a different prefix. Instead of A, call it B. And again, that's just going to help with sorting. And it's done. See the dragon now has a bite and a claw. The multiple attack is going to be in red text, and some of the cells are not needed. Because if you're tracking damage or what have you, you're going to be just changing this particular line entry here. So let's go back to the combat sheet now. We'll go to the Ad-Hoc section. Now you can see for the creatures we entered earlier, we have a bunch of NAs. That just means because we cleared the table, Ad-Hoc table, these are no longer present. So let's just delete them. Now we'll enter the creatures in the new table. Bite, claw from the adult black dragon. And let's do the 3 knights as well. Oops, no, that's right. So now these are available to use as an attack, which will be logged in the history sheet. So we can just go attack, we can do all the damages, and we can see that in the history sheet. You can see we added 5 creatures. You can see the attack for the black dragon. For the bite, we missed because it was a 1. For the claw, we rolled a 15, scored a 26 to hit, and so on. And you can see the 3 knights there. For the damage, for the black dragon, nothing obviously for the first one because it was a miss. And for the second attack, the claw, we got 20 damage, and so on. You can see what damages we got for the knights. You'll always see, when you do a damage roll, you'll always see damage and critical damage. In this case, there was no critical hits done, so but you'll always see the critical damage listed in the history sheet. So that's about it. A 30-minute video is long enough, I think. I hope you can see that TDRFive is much more than just a simple dice roller. It'll speed up tabletop play by eliminating the sometimes laborious task of finding and adding up multiple dice and applying bonuses. This is especially true when you, as a player, control multiple high-level characters that may be using multiple weapons. I also hope for Game Masters that apart from managing creatures for a campaign and doing combat rolls, the task of tracking damage and maintaining and changing combat order on the fly without using paper lists will greatly help efficiency. Not to mention being able to define and edit stat blocks for new and existing creatures. And although I haven't been through everything that's covered in the manual, I hope I've covered enough here to get you going with the essential elements of TDRFive. Anyway, please spend time browsing the table of contents in the manual to catch anything I've missed or skimmed over. Happy gaming!